The ropes have frozen stiff like veins clogged with salt and fear, and the morning air off the Bergen coast carries the weight of too many names carved into too many ship planks that never returned. You are not old enough to remember the last vessel that came back from the North Pole, but you've seen what little drifted ashore. Splintered oars, a mast carved with symbols that no one will translate, and a single boot filled with seawater and dried moss. Like a message returned too late. You are the net caster on a long, narrow cog that creaks like a dying throat every time it turns toward the ice. The ship is called Vardheim, though few speak its name aloud once past the breakwater. She is not new. Her timbers are grayed and gashed from prior attempts to brave what sailors call the Northern Whale Grave, but she sails with a strange pride as though she believes in her own resurrection. The morning you depart is thick with frost, and even the gulls are silent. The harbor folk only half look as your ship detaches from the land, slipping past fishwives and boys with carved driftwood talismans, all of whom touch their brows or spit into the wind when they realize you're heading. You stand near the bow, wrapped in a waxed wool cloak, 2 sizes too large, fingering the coil of net. You've knotted yourself over the long winter nights. Its pattern is your own invention passed down in whispers from a mother who vanished in a storm. Her final words layered between tales of selkies and drowned kings. Behind you, the other crewmen go about the motions of departure in near silence. They do not talk much, not to you, not to one another, not even to the captain. One of them, a hollow-eyed man named Torsten, stares at the horizon like he sees something hidden beneath the waves, some memory that pulses just under the surface. He wears his netting gloves even in his sleep, and he sings only to himself an old lullaby that ends in a cough or a muttered curse. The ship pulls past the fjords, moving into the open gray, where the water loses all reflection, and the sky becomes a smear of colorless mist. You take your post near the center mast, testing the knots of your casting net again, even though you've tied them twice already today. There is no room for error where you're going once the ship crosses that invisible line. Even a single miscast net can unravel into a curse, a legend, or a grave. Your captain, known only as Old Halvdan, wears a coat lined with what might be wolf fur or seal skin. His face is a knot of time itself, wrinkled, wind-beaten, but his eyes are curiously clear, like twin blades of ice unblunted by age. He has said nothing since boarding, merely raising one hand before you cast off lines, a gesture more ritual than instruction. Some say he once sailed to the Northern Whale Grave and came back alone, whispering in a tongue none could name, then spent the next decade building a ship from memory of something he'd seen, something alive. As you drift into the first length of open sea, an unnatural stillness settles around you. The waves no longer slap against the hull, but glide past, as if the ship were no longer moving through water, but through something thicker, heavier. There's a scent in the air too, not rot exactly, but age, like a cellar where sea charts have been forgotten, or an anchor chain buried too long in ice. You remember what the dockmaster muttered as he fastened the final knot. You cast into that sea, and sometimes it casts back. You didn't ask what he meant. You wish you had. By the second day, the sun becomes a memory. You know it rises somewhere beyond the overcast gloom, but its light never reaches the deck directly. Instead, a muted twilight persists gray, without blue morning, without promise. The sky and the sea seem to trade places, each reflecting the other's apathy. Birds vanish. Wind becomes occasional, but it always blows the same way forward, like something urging you on. In your sleep, you begin to hear sounds beneath the floorboards, soft creaks that do not match the ship's rhythm, as though something is pacing underneath. echoing your footsteps with a delay. The others say nothing, though you've caught a few glances at night. Torsten, pausing ears, tilted one hand tightening on the edge of his bunk. The food gets saltier, or perhaps your tongue changes. The dried cod and tack bread begin to taste like rope, and even the water drawn from barrels sealed tight in Bergen takes on the faint tinge of iron. No one complains. Complaining is for ships that plan to return. You spend your hours with the nets, repairing frays, running fingers over the knots, as if they can offer comfort. Each knot is a memory. One tied for your brother, lost in the fjords while fishing under a blood moon. Another for your aunt, who claimed she saw a whale breach in the shape of a man and laughed so hard she never woke the next morning. You've tied 27. You don't plan to tie anymore. On the 5th day, the fog thickens, not as weather but as presence. It coils around the mast like breath. It soaks into your boots, into the planks, into your thoughts. You begin to feel as though the ship is no longer traveling, but that the sea is moving around it, pulling destinations from distant maps and sliding them beneath your keel, like cards from a marked deck. There is no talk of latitude now. No one charts the stars. No one calls out depths, and still old Halfdan says nothing. You catch him once just before dawn, standing at the stern rail with his hand on the tiller lips moving. You listen. The words are rhythmic, slow, not Norwegian, not Latin, perhaps not words at all. More like the sound of water rolling over stones. You do not interrupt. His eyes flick toward you, and though his face does not move, you feel a warning in your ribs. That night, you lie awake and trace the planks above your bunk with one finger. The wood feels different now, slicker, too smooth for pine. Your dreams begin to change. You no longer dream of nets or home or the woman who waved a lantern as your ship faded into mist. You dream of silence and teeth and the hollow of a whale's eye filled not with fear but with memory. And then comes the whisper, a soft, dry voice from the slop bucket at your feet. It says your name not aloud but inside your mouth, like the memory of your name being said by someone long dead. You jump, spilling water. No one else hears. Or if they do, they refuse to admit it. On the 7th morning, a piece of bone floats past the hull, pale, knotted, bigger than a man's spine. It drifts, bumping the planks, then disappears beneath the stern without sound. You say nothing. Neither does Torsten, though his hands do not move for the rest of the watch. The sea has changed. It no longer reflects the sky. When you lean over the side, you see not your face, but flashes moments from other places. A candlelit hallway, a wooden staircase spiraling endlessly downward, a net coiled around a human skull. You blink, and it's water again, but not the same water, never the same. The journey northward is no longer linear. No one counts the days. The ship has begun to feel tidal, as if caught in some vast current of memory, drawn forward not by sails or stars, but by something beneath the ice that remembers every keel, every cry, every sinking. Tonight we begin with a question no one has answered. Why do whales come here to die? They call it the Northern Whale Grave, not because it is where whales go, but because it is where they are summoned, lured, drawn by something older than ice, deeper than salt, and you, with your nets and your fingers full of rope. Burns are about to cast your line into water that does not forget. It begins with knots, not the ones in your net, nor the ones in your gut, though both have begun to stiffen like sinew, pulled too long in the cold, but knots older than either. On the second full day since the sea stopped behaving like sea, you discover the first of them tied to the inside of the mainmast base. Hidden, old, almost ritual. A square knot wrapped around itself twice, then drawn through a loop of dried kelp, hardened into something resembling a seal. Not wax, not resin, but smooth and dark and faintly translucent, like a fingernail pressed too long in brine. You don't tell anyone, because you're not entirely sure the others haven't already seen it and chosen silence. It seems like that kind of ship. The kind where silence isn't a decision, it's a condition. An illness that creeps into the lungs with the fog and coats the inside of your voice before you've had a chance to speak. The further north you drift, if it's north at all anymore, the more you notice them little markings at first, tucked between planks or carved lightly into railings. A scratch that curves too precisely. A spiraled nail wound with rusted wire. Runes you suspect, but not the kind you find on standing stones or ancient grave goods. These are maritime runes whispered and spat, inherited by gesture instead of inscription. Signs only understood by those who learned to read water like a mirror that never reflects truth. Torsten seems to know them. You catch him one evening kneeling near the aft-hold hands, hovering over a chalked design made of tiny bones, ratbird, maybe something smaller. He wipes it away the moment he notices you watching, but not before you see the look on his face. Not fear, not shame. Reverence. Later, as you mend a tear in your casting net, he passes you without speaking, but you feel the weight of something placed in your palm. A small bundle, a clove of garlic, a carved fishhook made from tooth, not whale, but man, and a shred of cloth wrapped tightly around what turns out to be a dried tongue. Not human, but not human either. You keep it because refusal feels like invitation. The ship Vardheim continues forward without protest, sails slack wind absent. The water seems to part out of obligation, now not force. You are not sailing. You are being delivered. No birds, no currents, no direction. Only fog and the whisper of wood straining under knowledge it was never meant to hold. You begin to notice the rituals, not all at once, but slowly, incrementally, in the way one crewman hums the same phrase whenever approaching the hold, in the way old Halvdan sprinkles salt onto the prow each morning, not for preservation, not for taste, but with solemnity, as though feeding something that watches ahead. You wake one night to find a man slicing his palm and letting the blood drip into a bucket of herring before lowering it into the sea. When he notices you, he does not stop. He just nods, as if to say you will understand soon enough. No one speaks of whales anymore, but you begin to think about them constantly. There are no sightings, not even a ripple. Yet the sense of their presence builds like a pressure in the jaw, like your molars grinding against something you cannot chew. You've been told whales go north to die, that they beach themselves on the jagged floes and break their own backs in the stillness. But you've always wondered what calls them there. What could summon such giants with a whisper so low it travels through bone? By the sixth night, your sleep fractures. You drift, yes, but it's a sleep more like thawing ice, every movement sluggish, every dream damp. In one, you are casting your net and pulling up nothing but hair. In another, you are walking below deck and find yourself in a cathedral of ribs where barnacles whisper sermons, and the altar is your own eye blinking. When you wake, the wood under your hands pulses briefly. Like breath, one afternoon, you sit at the midship rail splicing rope when something sharp slices through your thumb. The wound is small, but blood beads instantly, and before you can reach for your rag, a drop has already landed on the deck. You swear you hear a creak, not of wood, but of something interested. You cover the wound quickly. That night, a crew member, whose name you never learned, vanishes from his bunk. No blood, no noise, just an absence, neat and dry. You tie a new knot in your net, not for function, for remembrance. More show themselves. The rituals deepen. Each man has his own. One scrapes a spoon across the mast 3 times before eating. Another never removes his gloves, not even to wash. You begin to notice them watching you, not with suspicion, but expectation, as if you have yet to choose, as if your silence is not enough, so you start your own. Each time you coil your net, now you do so in a pattern your mother once used when storing herbs for winter, clockwise with a twist at the end. You do it without thinking. You do it without knowing why. But after the second time, you feel the ship steady beneath you just for a moment. Like approval, the sea grows quieter, not in volume, but in variety. It is no longer waves and wind and creak. It is now a single hum, low and vast like the underside of a bell, made from something not meant to ring. You find yourself humming with it, unconsciously syncing your breath to its rhythm. You suspect the others do too, even the ones who refuse to admit they've heard it. And then the water turns clear, not just clearer. Clear, so lucid you can see down for meters, maybe more. The hull floats above a void so deep it swallows color. You glimpse shadows below massive ones too slow to be fish, too straight to be natural, too ancient to be named. Bones, you think, but you never say so aloud. One morning, Torsten approaches you at the bow where you sit, trying to make sense of a knot that's begun to untie itself every time you sleep. He crouches, runs a finger along the netting, and murmurs, "Don't use cross weaves past here. They don't like it." You want to ask who they are, but your throat closes as if someone or something prefers your silence. The fog lightens briefly, revealing a sky choked with pale streaks. Not clouds, not stars. Lines, as if the sky has been scored like old parchment. You try to trace them. They shift, always leading forward, always toward a place no map dares to name. That evening, the cook ladles out soup made from something you do not recognize. It smells of copper and mint. No one asks. You eat it. The warmth doesn't reach your bones, but it clears your thoughts for a few hours. You spend them writing your name on the inside of your boot in charcoal, just in case something finds it later. You cast your net twice that night. Once deliberately, once in a half-dream, not remembering having risen from your bunk. The first brings back seawater and tangled weeds. The second brings back something wrapped in your own handwriting, scraps of a journal you never wrote, pages soaked in curling, detailing moments you haven't lived yet. You burn them. The flames hiss blue. The smell is sweet. At midnight, the captain speaks. Not to you, not to the crew, to the sea. He kneels at the stern, presses his forehead to the planks, and begins a litany of names. Not in any language you know, but each word rings like iron dropped into snow. The sea responds not with sound, but with a long ripple that lifts the entire ship an inch, then lets it fall like breath, let out slowly after holding for too long. In your bunk, you dream of whale eyes again, but this time they are open, watching, crying. You try to turn away, but your own body is made of netting, and every time you twist, you tighten yourself. The next morning, the men hang charms on their bunks, bones, braids, teeth strung with copper. You take the dried tongue Torsten gave you and tie it into your shirt collar. It itches, but the itching feels like safety. By now, your sense of time has dissolved. The sun, when it appears, does not move. The moon, when it comes, sits bloated and distant, as if watching the sea mourn from above. You no longer count meals or watch changes in watch shifts. Everything is ritual now. Everything is belief. At the edge of your hearing always is the hum. Louder now. Almost a voice. It says not yet, and you obey. The fog that greets you the next day is not of this world. It arrives not as mist blown from sea to deck, but as a presence thick and deliberate, curling up over the rails in slow tendrils that wrap around mast and rigging like fingers, searching for familiarity. It mutes all sound, not just voices or waves, but thought itself, leaving behind only a vague pressure in the ears, like descending too fast into deep water. You cannot see more than a few paces ahead. Even the man at the helm is barely a shadow, his outline fading with each shift of breath. It's not that the world has disappeared, it's that the world has folded in on itself, and you are adrift inside its closed palms. The others speak less now, and when they do, it is in hushed murmurs, as though even their own thoughts must be whispered, lest something else hear. You begin to learn the language of glances, the way a raised brow at the prow means something brushed the hull, or the way Torsten's silence before meals has deepened into ritualistic pause. You've adopted the same behavior, though no one instructed you to. There's no rule book here, only the growing realization that deviation may be dangerous. You cast your net at dawn, and it feels heavier than usual. Not the physical weight, the net is only partially submerged, but something in the air around your arms seems to resist the motion, as if you're reaching through a curtain, not of fog, but of thought. You pull slowly, arms aching from sleep-deprived muscles and cold that seeps even through waxed wool. At first, nothing, just thick black water sliding off the cords, and then it appears, a shape. Not quite fish, not quite whale. Something white, curved. You lean closer, breath caught tight, and lift it free. It is bone. Smooth, sun-bleached, though no sun has shone. You think it might be a vertebra, but the proportions are wrong, too thin, too long. It has symbols etched into it, faint spirals. You run your finger across them and feel warmth. You do not tell anyone, not because you wish to keep the discovery for yourself, but because you instinctively understand this is not something to be shared. The bone is meant for you. A sign, a warning, or a welcome. You wrap it in oilcloth and tuck it beneath your bunk. The air changes again. It's subtle at first, a scent, not unpleasant, not rot, something older, cedar, no older still, like the inside of an unopened chest, like the scent of parchment sealed for centuries. You breathe it in and your hands begin to tremble, not from fear, from recognition. Somewhere within your bones, somewhere behind memory and beneath learned names, you know this place. Not as a sailor, not even as a human, but as a creature drawn here, pulled by instinct older than your species. By midday, the fog has thickened so densely that the ship no longer seems to move. There's no wake, no sound of passage, only the soft creak of ropes under tension and the gentle lap of sea against hull, except that it's not lapping anymore. It's breathing, rising, falling, timed. You walk the deck in slow loops, trying to clear your thoughts, but even thinking feels altered now, like your own inner voice is being translated through someone else's grammar. Sentences form in unfamiliar ways. You think of your mother and her stories of net casters who fished too far north and returned only in mirrors. You think of the lullabies she sang with tears she never explained. One of them rises to your lips, now unbidden. You hum it, and the sea seems to pause. Just once, just long enough for you to notice. When you cast the net again, it doesn't reach water. It lands on something solid beneath the surface, a shelf of bone-ice flesh. You can't tell, but it holds the net fast. You tug, it resists. Then slowly, the tension slackens and the net rises again. Empty, but for a single object caught among the cords, a jawbone, small, human-shaped, though the teeth are flat and too wide. Its surface glows faintly with phosphorescence that dims as you touch it. You don't show it to the others. You know they've been finding things too. Some cradle small bundles like children, some hide them in their coats. Some stare at them for hours without blinking. The fog parts for only a moment that evening, just wide enough for you to see the sea ahead. It is filled with bones, not floating, not drifting, arranged. Layered in patterns that make no sense at first glance but hold rhythm the longer you look. Spirals, rings, trails leading to what appear to be open mouths, giant vertebral arches emerging from the water like gateways. You are passing into a graveyard, but one that was built, not fallen into. A place of pilgrimage, not accident. One of the crew cries out. He points at the mast where something has begun to grow. It is a vine, twisting upward, pale as moonlight, though no moon is visible. It moves when watched, curling toward hands, toward breath. You step back. It retreats. The captain does not intervene. He merely nods, and the man closest to it cuts it down without speaking. No one questions this. No one asks where the plant came from. You all already know it was permitted. You find yourself on watch that night, alone. The fog lifts just enough to reveal a stretch of sea so still it seems painted. You walk the perimeter of the deck once, then pause at the rail. The water reflects nothing. Not sky, not ship, not you. It is a mirror, but one that only remembers. You lean closer. The surface begins to shimmer. You see yourself older. Not by much, but changed. Weathered in a way that isn't about age. The reflection smiles. You do not. Then it vanishes, and the sea becomes itself again. Below the ship, something large shifts. You do not hear it, but you feel it through the soles of your boots, through the boards of the deck, through your ribs. It does not rise. It does not breach. It simply turns, and the ship turns with it. You are no longer steering, you are being led. The crew does not protest. Most of them seem relieved, as if the moment they feared most was not being taken, but being forgotten. By morning, the water is different again. There are no waves, no current. Only a thick, viscous calm like the sea itself has congealed. You throw a coin overboard to test the surface. It lands with a faint thud and floats. The captain watches you, and for the first time, he speaks directly. Nothing sinks here unless it wants to. You nod, and then the screaming begins. It is not human, not whale. It rises from the east, from beyond the bone arches, from under ice you cannot yet see. A sound that feels like it's being pulled from your own spine. You drop to your knees. So do others. One man weeps. Another stabs his own thigh to stay conscious. The sound goes on for what feels like hours, then stops, and all is calm again. No one speaks of it, but the sea is different now. It remembers you. There is no sunrise on the next day, only a slow leaking of silver light, as if the fog has grown tired of being opaque, and now allows the barest slivers of visibility to slip through its veil. You do not know what time it is. The sky above could be dusk or dawn or something else entirely. The world is adrift in grayscale, and your mind begins to mirror the sea, layered in indistinct shapes, colored in memory, not reality. You awaken not in your bunk but on deck. Your hands are cold, your boots soaked. The net you keep coiled at your hip has unraveled in a spiral across the boards, as if someone or something was attempting to cast it while you slept. But no one else is nearby. The ship groans softly beneath your weight. You realize that your face is wet, not from rain or sea spray, but from tears. And you do not remember crying. You begin the day not with food, but with silence. The others are already at work, if their motions can still be called that. No orders are given. Everyone moves in patterns that feel less like tasks and more like reenactments. The cook stirs a pot that hasn't produced steam in hours. One man patches a sail that hasn't torn. Another checks a compass that no longer turns. You take your place at the rail again. There is nothing to do but cast and reel. The motions are all that hold you to yourself. The net falls, sinks, returns. Sometimes with seaweed, sometimes with bones, sometimes with water that smells of lavender and ash. Once it comes back empty, but the net itself has changed, woven differently with knots you never tied. You stare at it. Then you cast again. Torsten approaches just before mid-morning. His beard is crusted with salt, and his hands tremble, though whether from cold or belief you cannot tell. He presses a small pouch into your palm, soft leather stitched with black sinew. You do not ask what it is. You open it in private. Inside a shard of blackened glass, a dried mushroom with golden veins and a finger bone carved into the shape of a fishhook. No explanation, no instructions. Only a quiet exchange, as if to say, now you are part of the crew. You are. And you feel it not in title or duty, but in a deeper thread. A tether that now binds you to something beyond wood and rope and ice. A knowing that does not require teaching. The voices begin just after the third casting. At first, it is only one. Faint, feminine, though distant. It does not speak in words, but in syllables that curve around thought like language poured through water. You cannot repeat them, yet you understand. It says, we see you. You glance around. No one else reacts. No one else seems to hear. But the fog curls differently now. It parts just slightly, just long enough for you to glimpse something new. Ice, not the scattered flows you expect in northern waters, but a wall rising out of the sea like a continent carved from the bones of the moon. Jagged, pale, immobile. It spans the horizon, and within it are shapes. Whale skulls, frozen mid-song ship masts encased like relics, shadows of men or not men held in postures of prayer or agony or both. You realize you have arrived, the northern whale grave, but the word grave does not fit what you see. This is not a burial ground. This is preservation. A cathedral. A vault. Old Halfdan stands at the prow, one hand raised, the other pressed to his chest. He speaks again, this time in words closer to understanding. They are listening now, he says. The wind stops. The fog halts mid-sway. Even your breath seems to hush itself. From beneath the ship a knock. 3 beats. Then silence. Then 3 again. Rhythmic. Intentional. Torsten murmurs it begins. The crew gathers at the bow. One by one. No one orders it. No one resists. You join them. The sea beneath shifts not in waves but in temperature. The boards under your feet begin to warm. Steam rises and curls, and from the mist ahead a shape approaches. At first you mistake it for another ship, then for a whale, then for both. It is neither, and it is both. A construct of bone and timber moving without wind or sail. Its sides are lined with ribs that arch inward. Its figurehead is a human face. Eyes, hollow mouth open in mid-scream hair made of kelp. And it does not float. It glides, just above the surface. Its wake is silence. The fog retreats before it. And as it nears, you feel your skin prickle, your muscles tense, your thoughts narrow to a single phrase, not your own. We remember you. The ship, if that is what it is, passes within meters. No crew aboard, no oars. Only candles flickering along its hull, each flame steady despite no glass, no wind. and within each flame a face. You do not recognize them, and yet you do. Faces of those who sailed before. Whalers, fishers, sailors and sinners and saints. Some look at you, some look through you. One smiles, and you feel a memory you never lived bloom behind your ribs like a bruise. Then the ship vanishes into the ice, not crashing, passing through, as though the wall were mist, not mass. Your ship does not follow. It waits, and now the voices multiply. They rise from beneath the water, soft and innumerable. Some laugh, some cry, some sing, none scream. That sound you realize is not theirs, it is yours. The scream you heard before it came from the ship, from your hull, your planks, your own forgotten fear echoing back. You move below deck, not to flee, to understand. The hold is different now. It stretches, longer than it should be. The walls pulse faintly as if the ship has grown lungs. Your steps echo not like wood, but like stone. You pass barrels that now hum, nets that sway without breeze. And then you find the source of the knock. A panel has split near the keel. From within it, a hand, not reaching, not threatening, resting, pale, waterlogged, fingers webbed, nails like pearl. It twitches once, then curls inward. You do not scream. You touch it. Warm, it vanishes. You return to the deck. No one asks where you went. No one asks why your eyes are wet. The captain steps aside, points to the net. You cast. It falls heavier than before despite no change in weight. It descends quickly, deeply, deeper than the sea allows. The line stretches, groans, then stops. Caught. You pull. Others help. No commands, only movement. The net rises. Inside, not fish, not bone. A mirror, framed in barnacle-encrusted wood, cracked down the center, but clear. You see yourself, drenched, eyes wide, mouth closed, but you are not alone in the reflection. Behind you, a figure, cloaked, not crew, not human. It places a hand on your shoulder. You turn. Nothing. You look again. The mirror is empty. Torsten speaks at last. They're waking, and suddenly you understand. This place, it is not a destination. It is a threshold, and you have crossed it. It is on the 8th day, or at least what you assume to be the 8th, for the measurement of time has unraveled like a frayed knot, dragging behind a trawler, that the ship ceases to behave as a vessel at all. Not because it breaks or founders or loses its way, but because it no longer seems to sail upon water. It floats, yes, and the sea still laps against the hull in occasional breaths. But the world around you has changed in a manner that defies logic, chronology, and even gravity. You are not so much drifting forward as you are being turned inward, drawn into a spiral, not marked on any map, into a silence that is not the absence of sound, but the presence of listening. The fog has shifted in texture. It no longer simply surrounds the ship it moves. With it accompanies it, matching your pace, like a herd of slow, invisible animals just beyond reach. You run your fingers along the rail and find condensation thick enough to smear into streaks across the deck. You lift your boot and notice that it leaves no footprint anymore. The wood beneath you has grown too slick, as if the surface itself is forgetting how to be solid. The air is colder now, but not in the biting, wind-chilled way of northern frost. It is a colder cold, deeper, one that seeps into you through your pores, that clings to your bones even as your breath steams from your lips. You've stopped counting the times you've woken up, shivering, teeth clenched and fingers numb. And yet when you glance around, no one else complains. No one wraps tighter into their coats. It is as if the crew has accepted this new penetrating cold as part of the price to be here, or worse, as a signal of being welcomed. Today there is no casting of the net. Old Halfdan orders no haul. His mouth remains closed, his hands behind his back, and his gaze lost somewhere in the impossible vastness of that skeletal sea. The others mill about with measured steps and long silences, each one doing something that gives the illusion of routine, while privately engaging in something else entirely. One man who once fished off Iceland and told tales of marrow women with scales like silver bells now spends his days painting streaks of tar beneath the oarlocks, though the ship has no oars. Another murmurs old hymns to himself, but they have changed, altered slightly new stanzas, unfamiliar syllables and notes that seem to echo longer than they should, as if being repeated somewhere below the deck, mimicked by a chorus unseen. You find yourself pacing. The ship is not large yet, it feels larger now, like the corridors stretch a little more each time you walk them, like the cabins breathe when you're not looking. The hull creaks with a different pitch. The sails ripple gently, even though there is no wind to move them. You hear footsteps above your bunk when you know no one is up there. You hear whispering in the water barrel. You open your mouth to respond sometimes, forgetting that there's no voice there but your own. At noon, or what would be noon if the sun still existed, you descend below deck with a heavy heart and heavier boots. The descent itself feels steeper than you recall. The stairs groan with each step, and the shadows at the bottom flicker, even though no lanterns burn. You move past barrels and rope piles and bundles of fishing lines twisted in ways you do not remember tying. You feel watched. You arrive at the lowest hold. This place was once used for salted fish, but now it smells like herbs and mildew and something wet that doesn't dry. In the far corner, someone has built a shrine. You do not know who, and no one claims it. It consists of a circle of whale vertebrae, each upright and hollowed slightly at the top, like crude offering bowls. Inside them, feathers, pieces of red cloth, and a single stone that hums when you near it. Your mouth dries when you hear the hum. It does not frighten, but it unsettles like the vibration of a forgotten song returning to your memory with no source. You kneel beside the shrine not because you wish to pray, but because standing feels arrogant here. There is a reverence demanded, and you offer it because instinct tells you the consequences of refusal are not metaphorical. You place your hands on the floor and close your eyes. The hum deepens. Beneath your fingers, the boards throb not violently, but rhythmically, like a heartbeat. The ship is alive. Or not the ship, but something within it, or something below it. You cannot say. Then you hear it, a sound from the water, not a splash, not a wave, a word, not in your tongue, but in your mind, not spoken aloud, but pressed into your thoughts like a stamp into wax below. You do not ask what it means. You return to the deck in time to see a change in the crew. They are gathered at the starboard rail, shoulder to shoulder, not speaking, not gesturing, just staring down into the water with blank expressions. You join them, hesitantly peering over the edge. The sea has turned to glass again, reflecting nothing of the world above, but revealing something beneath. Shapes moving slowly. Not fish, not whales. Structures, temples perhaps, or ruins of them. Vast and broken columns rising from the ocean floor with algae like curtains, their capitals carved in spirals and notched patterns that twist the eyes if stared at too long. You see doors that open into nothing. Stairs that descend into shadow. Statues of beasts you cannot name, part bird, part eel, crowned with something that might be eyes, or merely the suggestion of them. One of the crew begins to sob. You place your hand on his shoulder. He does not move. Another mutters to himself, not in prayer, but in counting. 3, 4, 5, 3, 4. He repeats it until his voice is hoarse, then falls silent. You look deeper. There, just beyond the main arch of the submerged ruin, is movement. Something enormous, coiled. It does not surface. It does not acknowledge you, but you sense its awareness. Like the sea itself is watching through 1,000 borrowed eyes. The captain finally speaks. They used to think whales went north to die. His voice is dry, unused, like wind scraping through canvas. But they don't die. They change. He says no more. The fog thickens again. This time it's not a wall, it's a lid. It descends slow and heavy, curling downward until the world feels compressed, flattened into a thin corridor of air where breath becomes labor. You struggle to see, to speak, to think. You cast your net. The gesture is almost automatic now, ritualistic, like feeding an altar. The net slips below the surface, and for a moment, there is no resistance. Then everything tightens, the line jerks. You pull. Whatever you've caught fights not with movement, but with refusal. You brace your legs, call for help. Torsten is there before you can ask, hauling alongside you, face taut and grim. Others join. Together, you pull. The net rises. Inside, something like a skeleton. Not human, not whale. Humanoid, elongated. Limbs too many, too thin. Ribs spread like wings. The skull twisted, long snouted, with sockets that imply eyes that never blink. It is still alive. Its chest moves slightly. It breathes. The net is lowered again. Gently. No one speaks. No one dares keep it. It vanishes beneath the water with barely a ripple. That night you dream of it. You are not on the ship. You are beneath it, drifting slowly past rib cages larger than buildings. Whales swim above you, or creatures that once were whales, their eyes aglow with memory, not light. One of them opens its mouth. Inside, stars, not sky, actual stars. You drift closer. You fall in. You wake up on the deck. The stars are above now, real ones, but wrong. You count them. You know the constellations, or you thought you did. None remain. The stars here are unfamiliar, arranged in new patterns, as if the sky itself has rotated, as if your ship has passed beyond the charted world. And below, something knocks again. This time the knock comes with a name. Your name. It is not spoken aloud. It is not shouted. It arrives in your spine, rattles your ribs, rests behind your eyes. You are not afraid. You are expected. By the time you find yourself moving through the morning mist, if indeed it can still be called morning, you no longer try to orient yourself by sky, or sun, or sea. The world has slipped away from any concept of hours or direction. There is no east or west here, no rise or fall of a day, only an endless pale shifting of vaporous light through the fog, as if time has become a tide itself, washing forward and then folding back, bringing with it fragments of memory, fragments of thought, and fragments of things you cannot explain, yet feel etched within the marrow of your spine. The crew speaks even less now. Their movements have grown slow, almost sacred, like priests conducting rites whose meanings have long been lost, but whose forms must be preserved with absolute fidelity. You find yourself participating without instruction. You coil your net with slower hands. You hum melodies you do not know, harmonizing in the low, guttural tones that seem to resonate naturally with the hum beneath the boards. Your own voice surprises you. It is deeper, more hollow, as if echoing through your chest from some cavern you were not born with. The sea, if it is still, that has grown stranger than ever. The water's surface no longer ripples. Instead, it pulses, rising and falling, not with wind or weather, but with breath. The whole ocean breathes now, inhaling and exhaling in rhythm with the ship's slow glide through the bone-strewn grave. And the bones have changed as well. Once scattered and broken, they now appear in forms and patterns that suggest structure and tension, even worship. You see vertebrae arranged in rings around nothing as if awaiting a return. You pass skulls the size of carriages, mouths frozen in open awe or fear, their eyes hollow, but fixed upon the horizon as though still watching something they once believed in. No one speaks of the change in the water's temperature. It is warmer now. Beneath the ship, something generates heat, not the warmth of sun or fire, but the heat of living things of blood moving through vast arteries hidden under the surface. The thought should alarm you, but it does not. What is most unsettling is not the warmth, but the comfort it brings. It feels familiar, like returning to a room you left as a child, finding everything unchanged and dustless, waiting only for your breath to awaken it. The net feels different in your hands. When you cast it now, the net falls as if weighted with memory instead of lead, and what it returns with no longer surprises you. One morning, you pull from the sea a bundle of seaweed braided around a necklace that bears your mother's name carved in bone. She was buried inland far from the coast. You never spoke her name aboard the ship, and yet here it is wrapped in kelp, offered to your hand without hesitation. You do not weep. You simply wear it. Another time, the net returns with a bird's skeleton, not fossilized, not recent, but covered in symbols etched into the bone symbols you recognize from the shrine in the hold. You leave it at your bunk, and overnight, it disappears. In its place, a scrap of parchment folded in half. You open it, blank. Yet as you stare, words begin to rise as if drawn from the fibers by your gaze alone. They form your own handwriting, and the words describe a moment you are about to live, a cast that has not yet happened, a face you have not yet seen, a breath you will take when you next look out across the starless sky. The parchment burns itself to ash before you can read the final line. Torsten no longer speaks in full sentences. He murmurs, words that feel half-remembered and half-dreamed, names that sound like wind over ice, phrases that repeat themselves endlessly until he falls asleep sitting upright. Sometimes he stands at the prow and holds out his hands, not an offering but an invitation. You think he's waiting for something to take him, and one night you believe it nearly does. A shape rises in the mist, a mass of shadow and silver coiling upward from the sea like a tower made of mirrors. It pauses beside the ship, silent, immobile. Torsten does not flinch. He only nods. The shape remains for the span of 10 breaths, then sinks again, taking the light with it. In the darkness that follows, the ship continues. The captain has changed too. Old Halfdan no longer walks the deck. He is seated now, always at the stern, staring into the wake, which no longer churns, but lies still, a glassy trail behind the vessel that reflects no stars, no fog, no past. His eyes do not blink. His mouth does not open, but his lips move. You believe he is singing. You believe the ship is listening. You begin to dream less, not because you sleep less, but because the line between dreaming and waking has thinned beyond recognition. You now live within a dream that never ends. Sometimes, while eating or working the lines, you see things, moments you don't remember living, or glimpses of memories that belong to someone else. A child standing on a dock in a city you've never visited. A whale opening its mouth to reveal a cathedral within. A skeleton climbing onto a ship like a returning sailor. These visions no longer frighten you. They are familiar, like echoes from another version of you who once lived all these lives and left them folded in the pockets of the wind. One night the ship slows. No one touches the sails. No one adjusts the rudder. It simply halts, as if held by a hand that rises from the deep. You rush to the side along with half the crew and peer downward. The water parts not dramatically, not violently, but deliberately. It draws back to reveal a clearing. Below the ship there is no sea, there is land, or rather the illusion of land constructed entirely from bones. Skulls and ribs, vertebrae and tusks, all fitted together with seamless precision, forming a platform the size of a city. You see paths, corridors, altars. You see steps leading downward into chambers lit by phosphorescence. You see movement, slow, reverent figures cloaked in kelp and coral walking between monuments as if patrolling a realm that belongs only to them. And then the knocking begins again. This time it is not rhythmic. It is specific, Morse-like, a language of impact. Tap, tap, pause, tap, tap, tap. You don't understand the message, but you understand its intent. It is not asking permission. It is giving warning. Beneath the ship, the bones shift. The sea itself breathes in reverse. Instead of waves cresting and falling, the water below lifts upward as if the entire grave were rising. The ship does not fight it. You do not resist. You descend without moving. It's as if the world above is being pulled away, drawn upward, and out of reach. The fog thins. The light changes. And for the first time in days or weeks, or however long it's been, you see sky, but it is not your sky. It is a ceiling, miles above, carved with constellations you do not recognize, lit by lights that pulse and blink not like stars, but like living eyes. The air is still. The ship rests upon the bone plateau. The crew does not speak. The journey, you realize, has reached its fulcrum. You are now below. Below sea. Below story. Below self. Torsten approaches you once again. He does not speak. Instead, he offers you something wrapped in sailcloth. You open it. Inside a mask, carved from bone, shaped like a whale's skull. Holes where the eyes should be. Runes etched along the edges. You do not ask what it is for. You already know. When you put it on, the ship exhales, and everything changes. You feel the weight of the mask long before you secure the leather cords behind your head. It is not heavy in the way a stone might be, nor cumbersome like iron or armor, but it bears a density that seems to press down upon your thoughts the moment your skin touches it. As you lift the carved bone to your face, its polished surface still slick from Torsten's silent offering, there is a moment where the world seems to hold its breath. Even the wind, or what once passed for wind, ceases its endless whispering through the ropes and masts. It is as though the ship, the sea, the very bones beneath you, all wait to see what you will do. The bone is cool at first, almost soothing in its chill, like the first contact of water before a long plunge. The inside of the mask is lined with worn leather, and something beneath the surface pulses faintly, as if the material still remembers the skin it once covered. You fasten the cords around your head. The moment the last knot is drawn tight, something shifts, not outside but within. Your vision narrows, then expands. The sounds around you become layered. You hear the creaking of wood, the breath of nearby sailors, but beneath that, you hear something more. A resonance, like the deep note of a war horn echoing beneath ice, or the groan of the sea as it shifts its ancient weight. And then, almost imperceptibly, the world begins to reorganize itself. Shapes that once seemed random now align into patterns. The bones scattered across the plateau are no longer chaos, they are architecture. You see arches formed from whale ribs, columns from tusks, and bridges that span vast chasms constructed from vertebral chains thicker than tree trunks. The fog, once an undifferentiated wall of gray, now parts in threads, revealing doorways and paths etched into the surrounding mist, like grooves worn by centuries of movement. The ship has not docked, because there is no dock. It has merged. It now sits like a seed upon the surface of this bone-crafted world, and you feel the keel embedded into the structure below, grafted like a limb onto a body, long waiting to regrow. You turn to face your crewmates. Some of them wear masks now too, different shapes and designs, but all sharing that same uncanny craftsmanship, bone leather sea matter. Some have eyes covered entirely. Others expose only the mouth, and a few wear their masks backwards, as if to suggest they see not through vision, but memory. Torsten's mask is plain uncarved, but it radiates something potent, like heat from a fire that burns with no flame. Old Halfdan does not wear a mask. Instead, he now carries a staff a length of driftwood smoothed by centuries of sea and crowned with a shard of something black, glassy, and humming. He raises it once, and the crew begins to move. No words pass between you. No orders are barked, yet all understand what must be done. The descent begins. You step off the ship, and your boots make no sound as they meet the bone beneath. The surface is smooth, yet warm, not with the heat of the sun. There is none here, but with the living warmth of something that has never fully died. The ground seems to recognize you, and your feet find their own rhythm, as if retracing steps taken long ago. The path winds downward through the arches of whale spines and past towering femurs stacked like monoliths. You pass carvings etched into the bone scenes of transformation of figures shedding their skin like cloaks and stepping into the mouths of whales only to emerge changed. You recognize some of the faces in those carvings. One looks like Torsten, another impossibly like the cook. One looks like you. You do not stop walking. You come to a courtyard circular and vast, enclosed by a ring of skulls, each larger than a ship's hull. Their eye sockets stare inward, focused on a central altar formed from what appears to be the stern of a wrecked vessel, fused seamlessly with baleen and coral. Upon it lies a single object, a harpoon, but not one of steel. It is carved from a single flawless bone, gleaming etched with runes that ripple even as you look upon them. At its base is tied a bundle of kelp soaked in ink, and the barbed tip glows faintly with a light that pulses in time with your own heartbeat. Old Halfdan approaches the altar. His face, always unreadable, now bears something softer reverence perhaps, or exhaustion. He places his staff beside the harpoon and lays both hands on the weapon. Then he begins to speak. His voice is not the voice of a man. It is deeper layered, like a choir echoing in a cathedral submerged in water. The words are not in any tongue you know, yet they vibrate through your chest, and the meaning arrives not in the ears, but in the marrow. This is the threshold, he says, not the end, not the beginning. It is the place between song and silence, between air and abyss, between the death of memory and the birth of story. This is where the whales turn. The crew kneels. You do as well without hesitation. He continues. Every 70 years they call one ship, one crew, one vessel built not by hand, but by knowing. This ship answered. This crew was chosen, not because we are brave, not because we are worthy, but because we remember how to forget. Silence follows. The kind of silence that deepens rather than fades, a silence full of eyes of attention. Then the altar opens. It does not crack or break. It unfolds. The wood and bone shift, spiraling outward like a flower blooming in reverse, revealing a stairway of vertebrae descending into blackness. One by one the crew enters. The descent is slow. The steps curve inward as if circling the ribcage of something vast and buried. The air grows warmer with every level, and the light shifts from silver to blue, then to green, then to a faint red that glows from beneath the bones, casting everyone's shadow upward onto the tunnel walls. At the bottom, a chamber, circular, endless, ceiling lost in mist. In its center, a pool, not of water, not of blood, something else, a liquid that is neither, but both. Blacker than ink, but a live swirling of its own accord, rippling as if in response to your presence. Around it are statues carved from ivory and stone depicting every stage of transformation, human to whale to ship to memory. You do not know who carved them. You suspect they carved themselves. The crew circles the pool. The harpoon is placed beside it. No one touches it. Old Halfdan speaks once more. One among us must enter. No one moves. Then your legs move of their own accord. You step forward, not out of bravery, not out of curiosity, but because the pool has called you, and it would be foolish to ignore it. You kneel at its edge. The liquid glows faintly now. You see not your reflection, but a series of them versions of you from other paths, other choices, each one holding a net, each one staring back. You place your hand into the liquid. It is cold, then warm, then gone. You fall, but not downward. Inward, you see everything. The beginning of the sea, the first whale, the first song, the first ship that followed it, the first net ever cast. You see whales that are not whales, gods that wear bone like armor, oceans that remember every cry and dream. You see yourself standing where you are now, but older, eyes darker, mask fused to skin. You understand. You are not meant to fish the sea. You are meant to remember it. You open your eyes. You are in your bunk. The ship is still, but you are different. The net beside you pulses gently, and beneath the boards, the sea hums your name. You awaken, though it does not feel like waking. In the conventional sense, it feels instead like surfacing from a memory so deep and so old that it predates your own name. Your body is cold, but your skin is not covered in sweat. Instead, it carries a thin sheen of something that is neither salt nor water. It smells faintly of bone dust and the underside of an old hull, like a shipyard in a dream where vessels are built, not for oceans, but for stories. When you rise from your bunk, the world does not respond the way it used to. There are no voices, no sound of footsteps above deck, no clatter of wooden bowls or echo of boots on planks. You dress in silence, your hands working the buckles of your coat out of habit, though you notice you are wearing something else beneath the wool. A garment you do not remember putting on. It's made of tightly woven netting, black, seamless, and warm. It hugs your skin like it knows it. When you lift your hands, you see faint marking symbols etched along your forearms, as though your veins have begun to write in ink you cannot scrub away. You climb the ladder to the main deck, expecting mist or cold, or some haunting variation of either. But what greets you is not fog, it is clarity. The air is still painfully so. The sky above is no longer hidden behind a curtain of fog or cloud, but stands revealed a canvas of pale color and pinprick stars that do not resemble the constellations you once knew. They shift, they burn in strange colors, deep green blood amber, and a shade of blue so ancient it hums when you look at it too long. And though the air is calm, there is movement all around you. The ship is no longer at sea. Or if it is, the sea has transformed into something beyond comprehension. You walk toward the rail and look over the side. What stretches before and below the Vardheim cannot be water in any natural sense. It undulates, yes, and it reflects light, but it moves with patterns more akin to breath than current. Shapes drift beneath the surface, vast and slow, too large to be fish, too fluid to be whales. Some glow faintly. Others are shadows deeper than the dark. You cannot see their edges. You do not need to. They are watching you. You realize something else. The ship is no longer floating. It is resting. Resting atop the back of something unimaginably large. The bones of the beast can be seen at the waterline, massive vertebrae cresting just above the surface, each the size of a cottage, chained together by tendons of seaweed and kelp as thick as sails. The ship has become a passenger, or perhaps more fittingly, an altar placed upon this drifting colossus to bear witness or to participate. You hear footsteps behind you. Turning, you see Torsten, or something that was once Torsten. His eyes are darker now, pupils like ink dropped into milk, spreading slowly with each breath. His beard is wet, though the air is dry. Around his neck hangs the same bundle he gave you, but it has unraveled, revealing not bones or hooks, but teeth, human and not. Each tooth inscribed with the same spiraling mark that has appeared on your arms. He speaks your name, not as a greeting, but as a confirmation. You returned. You want to ask from where, but something stops you. A presence in the air, or perhaps inside you, reminds you that questions like that are no longer useful. The ship is not a vessel for arrival or departure. It is a crucible. And you, like everyone else here, are being refined into something else. Torsten steps beside you, and the two of you look out across the horizon. It is not a horizon, not really. There is no curvature, no edge, just a continuation. A sea of bones interspersed with pockets of glowing water upon which other ships rest like seeds on the surface of a massive breathing garden. You see them now, other vessels, dozens, maybe hundreds. Some are simple fishing boats, half rotted and crusted with coral. Others are galleons with torn flags, hulls carved with names long since forgotten. One is a longship, its sail torn, its prow a frozen scream. Another is shaped like a cathedral, complete with spires that shimmer with candlelight despite no fire. Each ship bears a crew. Figures stand motionless on the decks, some in reverence, some in agony, some in silent joy. They watch. They wait. You feel no fear, only solidarity. This is not madness. It is memory collective, endless, shared by those who dared sail beyond the world that could be mapped. You and Torsten descend into the hold together, neither of you needing words to coordinate your movements. The ship's interior has changed again. It is no longer merely boards and beams. The walls breathe. Veins pulse through the timber. The smell is richer now, salt and decay, and the scent of something burning, slowly like incense crafted from whale heart and old ink. At the base of the cargo hold is the mirror again. The one from days ago, though it has grown. It now stands as tall as a man, framed in a lattice of rope and bone, hung like a portal on the wall. You do not touch it, you only look. It reflects not your present form, but your possibility. You see yourself not as you are, but as you will be. Taller, leaner, covered in runes. Your eyes pale and clouded like those of the deep. Your hands hold no net, only a book bound in skin that turns its own pages. You stand at the helm of another ship, this one carved from ice and smoke, sailing toward a star that beats like a heart. Torsten nods once. You both kneel, not in worship, but in preparation. The mirror darkens, then shatters without a sound. The shards do not fall, they drift. Each piece floats upward out through the cracks in the hull, drawn by currents you cannot feel. You and Torsten watch in silence, understanding that something has been released. Above deck again, you see the others have gathered. The entire crew, mask wearers, chant whisperers, those who have gone silent from the beginning, stand in a ring at the bow. Old Halvdan stands at the center. His face is no longer that of a man. It has lengthened, thickened, transformed. His jaw juts out like a whale's snout. His eyes are luminous. His skin is slick and hairless, a hybrid between human and sea being. His transformation is not complete, but it is nearly so. He raises both arms. The harpoon appears again, but it is no longer a weapon. It is a key. The crew parts to let you forward. You do not hesitate. You place your hand on the harpoon. It is warm. It pulses. Halfdan speaks. Your cast will not catch. You nod. It will open. You nod again. You turn to the side of the ship. The net at your hip twitches. You cast it one final time. It arcs through the air, glowing faintly, each knot alive with breath. It lands not in water, but in the sea of memory. And something opens. Beneath the ship, the Colossus stirs. Its eyes, each the size of sails, blink for the first time, and it begins to rise. With you. There is no announcement, no horn blown from the crow's nest, no chorus of drums or crewmen calling out in unison. There is only motion, slow, seismic, and eerily quiet. The kind of motion that doesn't begin with action, but with revelation. The bones beneath the ship begin to shift, not as separate pieces rearranging themselves, but as the limbs of a single buried leviathan stirring from beneath centuries of sediment and salt. The Vardheim, long resting on its back like a votive offering, rises not by force of sail or wind, but by the will of something that slumbers no longer. You do not fall. None of you do. The deck tilts gently, imperceptibly, as the water, if it is still water, recedes away from the hull. The keel groans as if stretching, awakening from its own long sleep. The sound is deep resonant, more felt in the ribs than heard in the ears. Torsten's fingers tighten around the nearest rope, not in fear, but reverence. Old Halfdan watches with eyes that have gone fully translucent, like the lens of a deep-sea fish that has forsaken light. No one speaks. What language could be used in a moment like this, where words lose shape in the gravity of myth? You move to the port side, breath caught, not from fear, but anticipation, like the moment before a curtain parts, when the stage remains dark and still, and the audience leans forward, because something important is about to be revealed. And what you see now, with the mist parting at the edges of your vision, is something no sailor, alive or dead, was ever meant to witness. It is not just a creature. It is not merely a whale or a leviathan or some monstrous amalgamation of flesh and memory. What emerges from beneath the Vardheim is an island made of beast, an ancient engine of the sea, crowned in coral and runes that predate metal and stone. It is alive, and you are aboard its back. Its spine arches with impossible grace, ridges glowing faintly, with an internal light that pulses like a heartbeat, visible through translucent skin. Its tail, still submerged, stirs a current that rolls back the fog for leagues. You can now see the entire grave not as a random wasteland of shipwrecks and scattered bones, but as an organized ritual site, circular and vast with paths that intersect spirals that repeat and towers made of vertebrae rising from the sea like the spires of cathedrals built to honor the deep. Other ships, those you glimpsed in previous days, half seen through the fog and doubt, are now fully revealed. Each rests on its own colossus. Each has risen, and each ship bears a crew. You can see them, some watching in silence like your own others, mid-chant, their hands raised, their faces masked. There are hundreds of vessels, each carved from a different era, each bearing marks of voyages. Long-thought, lost longships with dragon heads, schooners whose sails are stitched with unknown constellations, junks bristling with spears carved from obsidian and shell. And in the center of it all, where all paths seem to lead and all ships appear to circle, there is a hole in the sea, not a whirlpool, not a storm, an absence, a great perfect void, black and alive. From the deck, it appears to go on forever, not downward, but inward, spiraling like the inside of a conch shell that leads into a place not bound by depth or time. The water around it is frozen in motion, spirals etched into liquid as though the sea had been paused mid-thought. Light reflects off its surface in strange ways, casting duplicates of ships that twist and lengthen, like dreams remembered out of order. You now understand what the harpoon is for. You feel it in your gut and your bones. This ritual, this voyage, it was never about catching. It was never about fish or whales or proving skill in the cold wilderness of the north. It was about descent. It was about initiation. It was about sending something back deep into that waiting place, into the chasm that pulses like a mouth too large to name. The harpoon is not meant to wound. It is meant to deliver. Old Halfdan takes it from its resting place without words. He offers it to you. His hands are shaking, not with weakness, but with effort, like a man holding a candle against a wind that has waited centuries to blow it out. When you take the harpoon, it feels lighter than before, and warmer, as though it recognizes your touch. The runes along its shaft glow faintly, pulsing in rhythm with your own heartbeat. The crew parts as you walk forward. The ship's bow now extends into nothingness, no railing, no ropes, just the curve of the creature's back dipping downward into fog. The wind returns softly now, lifting your hair like the whisper of a mother bending to say goodbye. You step forward until you stand alone at the edge, harpoon in hand, and peer into the great spiral below. There are no instructions. There are no ceremonies. Just the stillness of the sea waiting to be spoken to. You raise the harpoon. You feel it gather something within you. Memory, longing, grief, hunger. Every cast you've made, every night you've listened to the sea, every shadow you've watched slide beneath the hull, it collects them all. It remembers, and then you let it go. It flies not with force, but with purpose, sailing downward, the runes flaring bright for a moment, then dimming as it disappears into the dark. It does not strike water. It does not sink. It is taken. The moment it vanishes, the sea exhales. The void below expands not outward but in light. Tendrils of phosphorescence spiral from its edges, curling upward into the sky like smoke trails made of stars. One by one, the other ships begin to sing. Low at first, then louder, their chants overlapping, harmonizing, forming a great chorus that vibrates across the surface of the water. Your own crew joins in their voices, now resonant and deep, as though passed through shells filled with centuries of breath. You open your mouth and find yourself singing too, not words but tones, raw and full-shaped, not by language, but by feeling. And the Colossus responds. It dives, not fast, not abrupt, gracefully. You do not hold on. You do not need to. As it descends, the air grows thick with light and memory. You see flashes around you, visions painted in water, a child casting a net and pulling up stars, a man walking across the surface of the ocean, leaving no ripples, a whale giving birth to a ship in the shallows of a forgotten bay. The sea sings back. It sings of the first voyage ever taken. It sings of the net that caught the wind. It sings of you. And then, just as the light peaks, just as the sound becomes too beautiful to bear, everything stills. The creature halts mid-descent. The water holds. The singing stops. And there ahead of you, in the center of all things, you see it. A mirror. The same mirror that once floated in your net. Now large, now complete, now whole. You do not see your reflection. You see the seas. It is ancient. It is lonely. It is waiting. And you understand truly, completely, that this voyage was never about crossing water. It was about becoming it. You step forward, and the mirror accepts you. You do not remember the moment your foot crossed the threshold between ship and sea. You only remember the sensation of weightlessness, not the kind that accompanies a fall, but something more profound, more internal. It was not your body that became light, but your sense of separation between skin and water, between memory and presence, between the person you thought you were and the one now being drawn forward into a mirror that did not reflect, but absorbed. The glass did not shatter, it did not ripple, it did not swallow. It simply opened, and you passed through. The sensation is not cold, not sharp, not even wet. It is total. You are held surrounded by something that hums not only in your ears, but in your bones. Your eyes remain open, though there is no light to see by. You sense movement, yet the space around you does not change in any measurable way. Time ceases to offer itself in pieces. There are no moments here, no before or after. There is only now, and that now stretches infinitely in all directions. You try to breathe. You do. There is no suffocation. The sea here is not hostile. It does not drown or drag or crush. It welcomes, and then slowly, your surroundings begin to form, not out of nothing, but as if revealed layer by layer, as though your vision is adjusting, not to darkness, but to depth. The space is vast, but not empty. It is a hall, not a man-made one, though the architecture has structure. Arches of bone soar overhead like cathedral vaults, their spines illuminated with lines of glowing amber that pulse gently as if responding to your heartbeat. The walls are formed from sediment and fossil layers of creatures pressed together into strange mosaics. There is no floor. You walk upon something that feels like sand, though it shifts underfoot, not with movement, but memory. You take each step with care, not because you fear falling, but because you sense that every footfall awakens something beneath, and around you on every side are statues. You realize this only slowly, for at first they seem too lifelike to be still. They stand in alcoves carved into the walls, their bodies frozen mid-motion, their eyes open. Some are robed, others naked. Some hold harpoons or nets. Others cradle books, ropes bones, or children. They vary in size and shape, in ethnicity and age. But all have one thing in common. They are you. Not identical copies, but versions. Versions of you who made different choices. One holds a net stitched in gold. Another clutches a spear broken at the shaft. One wears a mask made entirely of whale teeth. Another bleeds from the eyes. Another smiles. You turn in a slow circle, understanding more with each breath. This place is not meant for navigation. It is meant for reflection, not on who you are, but on who you have been, who you could be, and who perhaps you have yet to become. Each version of yourself watches you with silent expectation. You are not judged here. You are remembered. You step closer to one of the figures. It is older than you, face lined hands gnarled from years at sea. Around its neck is a cord of woven seagrass strung with tiny bells that do not chime. You recognize the eyes. They are yours, but softer, wiser, sadder. In its left hand is a scroll sealed in wax. In its right, nothing. You reach out and place your fingers where its hand is open, and the scroll unseals. The wax crumbles like salt, and the parchment unfurls itself mid-air. There are no words, only images. You see your mother standing on the cliff near your childhood home, lantern held aloft, eyes squinting against the wind. You see the village boy you once dared to race across the rocks, his laughter echoing like gulls. You see the hand of your first teacher, gnarled and shaking as she guided yours through your first casting knot. You see your own hands trembling as they grasped the net for the very first time, bracing for a catch that would never come. And you understand, this scroll is not a story. It is a permission. The image fades. The statue closes its eyes. You move on. One by one, you pass the other versions of yourself, each bearing different tools, different scars, different paths, each offering a moment, a feeling, a fragment of a life lived in the margins of possibility. Some are happy, some are not. Some are monstrous in ways that cannot be measured by appearance. One has no mouth, one has no shadow. One whispers as you pass in your own voice. We dreamed of this. At the far end of the hall, the corridor narrows. The statues stop. You are alone again. The corridor opens onto a chamber, and here for the first time you see the heart. It is not an organ, not in the biological sense. It is a mass of light and bone floating at the center of a perfectly round room. It pulses slowly, casting shadows that stretch and retract like tide lines drawn in ink. Around it swirl relics, harpoons, nets, oars, journals, lanterns, teeth, masks. Some of them ancient, some of them yours. They do not orbit mechanically. They drift with purpose, each object tracing a path around the light, like thoughts spiraling in a dreaming mind. You step forward. The chamber brightens in recognition, and the heart speaks. It does not use words. It does not use sound. It reaches into you. It peels back the layers of memory and lays them flat before you. And then gently it asks a question, not in words but in sensation. It asks if you are willing, not to return, not to forget, not even to become, but to carry the story, the weight of it, the burden and the blessing, the knowing. You do not answer with your mouth. You answer with your breath. You exhale, and the light folds into you, not violently, not completely, just enough to become a vessel, just enough to become a net. The chamber fades. You awaken again on the deck of the Vardheim. It is morning, and this time it feels like a real morning, the kind that comes with dew and horizon and the distant promise of shore. The fog is gone. The sea is calm. The ship floats not on mystery, but on current. The crew is quiet, but not in fear. Their silence is full of things too deep for speech. Old Halfdan nods. Torsten smiles. You do not ask how long it has been. You do not ask if the others saw what you saw. The only thing that matters now is the net. You walk to the bow and find it waiting for you, coiled neatly, every knot perfect. You cast it, not because you expect a catch, not because you are hungry, but because it is what must be done. And somewhere below the surface, the sea remembers your name. Dawn arrives differently now. You feel it not as a visual phenomenon, not as a change in the sky's color or the softening of shadows, but as a rhythm that stirs beneath the deck, a swelling beneath the boards that matches the beat of your own heart. The sun, if it even still exists beyond the strange heavens you now navigate beneath, casts no golden light across the horizon. Instead, there is a diffuse glow that spills like diluted ink across the sea's mirror surface, soft, silvery, and cold, yet undeniably alive. You rise before the others do, though it is hard to say whether they sleep at all anymore. Sleep, like so many former categories of being, has dissolved into something else, more of a drifting in place than a retreat into dreams. You often lie awake and feel your memories rearranging themselves, not vanishing but subtly shifting like the tide reclaiming stones on a shore and returning them elsewhere with a different polish, a different shape. What was once certain about your past, your village, your reasons for leaving, the exact details of the night you first boarded the Vardheim, now feels like a song half remembered, haunting, resonant, and impossible to sing in full without someone else to help carry the tune. The ship is quiet. The silence here has changed too. It's no longer the tense hush of men awaiting something terrible, nor is it the mechanical quiet of labor suspended. It is rather a holy quiet, sacred, like the stillness inside a chapel before the doors open, or the space between two verses of a hymn. You cross the deck barefoot now, as do most of the crew. No one made that decision. It simply became the way. Something about feeling the deck's breath underfoot, the pulse of the ship itself, grounds you. Or perhaps not grounds you, but reminds you that you are no longer on a journey through space, but through something denser stranger memory myth, or something that encompasses both. The sea around the Vardheim has transformed once again, though no one remarks on it. Gone is the heavy fog and bone-encrusted stillness of the grave, and in its place is a vastness that defies definition. The surface of the water now reflects things that are not present above. It ruined towers, massive trees growing upside-down fragments of faces you do not recognize, but somehow feel familiar with. When you gaze too long into the sea, now it does not offer you a reflection, but a rehearsal. Things that have not yet occurred, but are waiting for you to step into them. In this place, the future appears to be as malleable and as deliberate as the net in your hands. You reach the bow and see it. The net you cast before your descent into the mirror chamber returned, and now coiled with almost reverent care. No one has touched it. You suspect no one could. It glistens faintly, not from moisture, but from something within its knots, light trapped between fibers, flickering like breath behind glass. You kneel beside it, running your fingers along the edges. The knots are no longer entirely yours. Some patterns you recognize loop and twist, pull and bind, but others are new, older, etched in forms that carry the rhythm of chants you have not learned, but already know how to sing. You cast it again, not because of instruction, not out of hunger, but because it is what this moment calls for. The action is no longer utilitarian. It is devotional. You do not throw it with your arms alone. You throw it with your memory, your breath, and your bones. The net flies not as a weighted weave of rope and resin, but as a question flung into a sea that never stops answering. And when it lands, it does not splash. It lands softly, deliberately, as though placing itself atop something that has waited for it. You begin to pull. There is resistance, but not from weight. The line strains like a thread, drawn through thick ink, but it responds to your strength. The crew has gathered silently behind you now, not to assist, but to witness. They form a semicircle, masks in place, each of them still as statues, faces tilted downward in respect or prayer or something in between. The net returns, and it brings something with it. At first, it appears as a shape, not immediately distinct, just a bulge, a coil, a knot. You haul it up with the same steady rhythm you've learned over weeks. No longer the choppy pulls of an inexperienced sailor, but the smooth, grounded cadence of someone casting through layers of time. The object emerges. It is not a fish. It is not bone. It is a shell. Massive, perfect spiral. A conch, but impossibly large. Longer than your torso. Heavier than anything you've brought up before. Its surface glistens with a strange patina that resembles both rust and pearl, and carved into its whorled skin are scenes figures like yourself, casting nets into dark waters, ships being swallowed by waves that have eyes, whales speaking through spiraled horns. You place the conch gently on the deck, and the sound it makes when it touches the wood is soft and low, like a bell being rung underwater. No one moves. No one breathes too loudly. Then the conch begins to hum, not in noise but in vibration. You feel it first in your fingers, then in your wrists, then your ribs. It is not a song yet. It is a key, a tuning. The ship vibrates in sympathy, and then old Halvdan steps forward. His transformation has accelerated. He no longer walks like a man. His movements have acquired a fluidity that recalls the slow grace of jellyfish drifting through the deep. His hair is gone, replaced by fine tendrils of something that resembles both kelp and smoke. His skin gleams with the texture of whale hide, thick, cracked, and lined with the luminous blue of bioluminescent trails. He carries no staff now. He carries only silence, and he kneels beside you, beside the conch. You kneel too. Together, you place your hands upon its surface, and it sings a long, low note. that does not rise or fall, but grows. It expands outward like breath, in a cathedral reaching the edges of the deck, spilling down the masts, wrapping around the ropes and sails. The other ships, yes, they are still visible, arrayed around the spiral void like pilgrims at the edge of a holy city respond. One by one their crews lift horns, nets, hands, eyes. They do not copy you. They answer. Each ship begins to hum. Each crew begins to glow. The sea responds. The spiral opens. What was once a dark maw at the center of this hidden grave has become a gate. A whirl, not of destruction, but of memory, layer upon layer of time, folding in on itself. From within, it rises no beast, no god, no threat. What rises is a voice. You do not hear it with ears. You do not translate it with mind. It moves through you like a tide, brushing against every knot you've ever tied, every line you've ever thrown, every breath you've drawn at sea. It asks no questions. It offers no explanations. It simply is the essence of everything you've come to understand since that first morning. The Vardheim left the docks of Bergen. This is not the end. It is the arrival. You are no longer merely a net caster. You are a bearer of stories, of fragments, of echoes and truths. You feel the conch warming beneath your palm. It pulses one final time, and then it opens. Not like a flower, not like a door, but like an eye. And within it, there is no pearl. There is only yourself. Not the body you inhabit now, but the one that remains behind in every net cast too far, in every memory left adrift. You see the version of you that drowned in another life, the one that became a wave, the one that sang with whales, the one that still stands barefoot on a cliff lantern raised against the storm waiting. And then the conch dissolves. It does not shatter. It dissolves into mist, into memory, into salt, and you and Halfdan and Torsten and the silent crew of the Vardheim remain still on the deck, breathing as one. The sea calms. The stars above realign. The ships begin to turn, and though no anchor is lifted, no sail hoisted, the Vardheim moves, gently, purposefully, away from the spiral, not toward home, but toward the next memory. You no longer think in terms of distance, nor do you measure the journey by days or knots or stars, because what now surrounds the Vardheim cannot be mapped with the tools once familiar to you. The ship moves, yes, but it moves as a thought does slow. At times, swift at others, and often in spirals that resist straight-line logic. There is no true north here, no cardinal direction that will return you to the shores you departed from. No sail trimmed against wind because there is no wind. The Vardheim now navigates by memory, by ritual, and by the deep, wordless yearning of the sea itself. Each morning is different than the one before, not because the world has changed, but because you have, or perhaps both. The sea surrounding your ship is not always blue or black. Some days it gleams with silver mist like a mirror held just beneath the surface of consciousness. Other days it turns red, not like blood, but like the skin of a deep-sea fish that glows to lure what it remembers dying beside. There are nights when the water disappears altogether, leaving the Vardheim suspended on invisible strands of tide light, as though sailing across the memory of an ocean long since drained. You keep watch now without being asked. The role has become yours, though no one declared it so. Old Halfdan no longer speaks, not out of silence, but because he has entered a state beyond speech, where his thoughts are translated through gesture, through the position of his eyes, through the way his breath mists or doesn't mist in the air. He stands less often, preferring now to sit near the bow legs folded like a monk's hands, resting on his knees, fingers slowly moving in spirals that resemble the eddies left behind by disappearing whales. Torsten remains close. He has changed too, but differently than the captain. His skin has not darkened or become smooth. His voice has not fallen silent, but his eyes now reflect more than just light. They reflect dreams. You've seen it when he looks at you in the early hours, as if reading stories written across your shoulders. You suspect he has been through the mirror, though he's never said. Perhaps everyone on this ship has at one point or another. Perhaps the journey requires multiple passages. Today, the sea is calm, but there is a weight in the air, not oppressive, not cruel, but expectant. The sky above is stretched tight with clouds that shimmer in unnatural patterns, and the crew stands still on the deck, facing outward in every direction, like statues waiting for a signal that only the water will deliver. You step beside your net. It waits where it always does, coiled perfectly, the knots unchanged, but never unremarkable. When you lift it, the fibers feel warm, pulsing faintly, as though eager. You cast it not into the sea, but into a kind of memory that has coalesced on the surface of the water. Images blurry but distinct, flickering beneath the glassy skin. A coastline, a city of spires shaped like spines, a child waving from a tower carved from salt. You recognize none of it yet. You feel the ache of homesickness rise in your throat. You cast into it anyway. The net sinks. When you pull it back, there is no catch, but the water resists, as if reluctant to release something it had not known it was holding. The net returns empty, except for a single feather. Large, black, glossy. You hold it in your hand and your skin tingles. Not in pain, in recognition. It is warm, heavier than a feather should be. And as you lift it to the light, you see the reflection of your face along its curved spine, but not your current face. Not the face you've worn aboard this ship. The reflection stares back at you with eyes pale as moonlight, a version of you that has already forgotten what it once was. You wrap the feather in a scrap of linen and tuck it beneath your coat near your ribs. It beats there softly. The crew begins to hum. It begins at the stern, where a deckhand with no name sways slightly on his heels, eyes closed, lips parted. The sound he makes is not melodic, but low and steady, like the call of something long submerged and newly awake. Others join, not in harmony, but in agreement. The hum spreads across the deck like a fog rolling over dunes. It rises, then dips, forming a rhythm that bypasses thought. You do not hum, not yet. You listen. Your heartbeat aligns. The Maritime slows. Ahead, a shape begins to form, not on the horizon, but beneath it. It rises not from water, but from dream. Slowly, broadly, and you begin to understand what you are seeing. It is an island, but not of earth. It is made entirely of boats, hundreds, perhaps thousands, lashed together by barnacle and rope, stacked and fused, some whole, some shattered. A citadel of forgotten voyages. Masts protrude from it like the bones of whales too large for burial. Lanterns flicker between broken hulls, casting sickly yellow light against the encroaching dusk. You see sails used as bridges, rudders as balconies, oars suspended like chimes, and the island moves, gently, barely perceptible, as though breathing. No orders are given. The ship veers toward it of its own volition. The crew readies nothing, no ropes, no anchor. You all simply watch. As the ship draws near, you see figures along the edges of the floating citadel. Some wave, some do not move. Some hold lanterns, some carry bones. Their faces are indistinct, not obscured, but undefined, as if time has not yet decided what they should look like. You feel no danger, but you do feel that this is not a place you can stay. It is a place of pause, a place of exchange. The ship slides into a gap between hulls. A space opens wide enough for you and two others. Torsten joins you. So does a woman who has not spoken since the first night. You do not know her name. You do not need to. Together you step off the Vardheim onto the island of lost ships. The moment your feet touch its surface, the texture of the air changes, not just thicker, but older. You feel it in your lungs, a weight of breath that has passed through centuries. The planks underfoot creak with languages you've never spoken. The walls of nearby boats whisper stories in winds that no longer blow. The three of you walk slowly. Lanterns guide you, not carried by hand, but floating just ahead, as if leading you down a path forged from stories and anchored by ritual. You pass carvings etched into the ribs of shattered ships, scenes of birth, of drowning, of transformation. You see whales swallowing stars, men diving into flames, nets catching not fish, but entire constellations. One image shows a figure, small and robed, holding a mirror to the sea. The sea, in turn, holds a mirror to the figure. You are brought to a chamber. It is not built, but discovered a hollow formed by a dozen prows, all pointing inward. At the center, a pool, still, black, waiting. A voice speaks, not from a mouth, but from the pool itself. You are the one who caught nothing. You do not speak. You are the one who cast without hunger. You nod. You are the one who carries the feather. You remove it from your coat and hold it high. The water accepts this. A ripple expands. The woman steps forward. She holds out a small object, a shell shaped like an ear. The pool accepts it. Torsten steps forward. He offers a finger bone carved with the rune of breath. The pool drinks it. A glow rises. The pool begins to form an image, not a reflection, a memory. You see the ship from above, sailing through skies made of whale song and auroras. You see the sea below opening into a spiral mouth. You see your own face wearing a mask made not of bone, but of silence. And then the pool darkens. You may return, says the voice, but you may not remember. And you understand. The forgetting is not punishment. It is payment. You lower your hand. You bow. The pool vanishes. When you return to the Vardheim, the ship has changed. It glows now, not brightly, but with a steady inner light. The ropes are thicker, the planks warmer. The sails shimmer like jellyfish in moonlight. You step aboard, you cast the net, and this time it returns with something unexpected. A child's shoe, still wet, still warm, still waiting. You tuck it beside the feather, and you do not ask why. There is a point on the sea, or perhaps within the sea, that no map has ever captured. No ink, no compass, no scrap of vellum nailed to a navigator's charting board can define it. But every sailor who has journeyed long enough, dreamt deeply enough, or listened closely enough has heard whispers of this place. It is said to lie beyond the reach of tide or current, beyond the margins of the known world, where the water begins to think and the wind forgets its name. You did not mean to come here, and yet here you are. The Vardheim moves without wind. She does not sail so much as drift with intention, as though she is following a scent carried through time. The sea is unnaturally flat now, like the surface of a table, polished so smooth it reflects not only the sky, but the future. Overhead, the sky has ceased to be a sky. It is now a membrane, a dome of pearlescent haze that pulses subtly, a thing that seems to be breathing in tandem with the ship's forward glide. And still, the journey continues, not in days, for you no longer measure in days, but in episodes of transformation. Since your return from the citadel of ships, since the pool that demanded your feather, the crew has become quieter in ways that can no longer be called silence. They are not merely quiet, they are becoming still. Their bodies continue to work. The lines coil the ropes, clean the rails, but it's as if their hands remember tasks their minds have abandoned. Torsten, once your closest human anchor, now sleeps standing against the mast, his arms bound in netting that glows faintly at dusk. When he speaks, if he speaks, it is in riddles, half-chants, or ancient lullabies in languages you do not know, but understand in the marrow. Old Halfdan, meanwhile, has become the masthead. Literally. You awoke 2 mornings ago to find that he no longer occupied his usual place near the stern. His staff, once a permanent extension of his hand, rested neatly on the deck beside his folded coat. The crew stood gathered at the bow, eyes wide and reverent, not a trace of alarm in their features. You pushed through them. There he was, no longer man, now statue. Carved in sea-worn wood, his figure knelt at the prow, palms raised, eyes closed. A masthead perfect in detail, lifelike in expression, and undeniably real. No one touched him. No one wept. One of the crew whispered, "He's watching ahead now," and everyone nodded. And so you accepted it, not out of indifference, but because such things now belong to the natural rhythm of your days. The world changes. People become symbols. Symbols become parts of ships. And ships, well, ships remember. The sea has begun to speak again, not in voices, but in phenomena. Yesterday, the water around the hull turned to glass, and the reflection of the ship split in two. One version, trailing behind you like a shadow, the other veering off to the left, as though choosing its own path. At one point, you swore you saw a second Vardheim, sailing parallel to your own, with a different crew aboard, some dead, some never born, some looking exactly like you. You waved. The other version did not. Today the sea is dark, not ominously so, not with clouds or threat of storm, but deliberately dark, as though the sun has been asked to turn away its gaze for a while, to let something older rise from below. The sky is empty. No birds, no clouds, only a great expanse of quiet blackness above and an identical blackness below, separated by the gentle rocking of your vessel and the rhythmic creak of boards shaped by time. And then the singing starts. It is low at first, like the murmur of wind through rigging, but no wind blows. The melody rises from beneath, from somewhere deep below the waterline. It is not made by human mouths, nor is it quite whale song. It is more like the sound of breath moving through hollow spaces, the wind in a cavern, the echo through the ribs of a giant. You move to the edge of the ship. The entire crew has gathered, standing still, eyes closed, chests rising and falling in sync with the rhythm. You close your eyes too. The song enters you, not through your ears, but through the soles of your feet, through the scars on your hands, through the spaces between your thoughts. It is an old song, older than rope, older than fish, older even than bone. It is a song sung by the sea itself, a lullaby it wrote for the first ship that ever dreamed of floating. Images flash in your mind, not memories, projections. You see a vast ribcage longer than a fjord resting on the ocean floor. You see a village built atop a sleeping whale, its rooftops thatched with seaweed, and its windows glowing with blue bioluminescence. You see a child barefoot and cloaked diving from the mast of a ship that is burning, not with fire, but with time. You see yourself very old, standing on a dock made of teeth, casting a net into a sea of stars. You open your eyes. The sea has changed again. Now it glows. A soft shimmer like the underbelly of a jellyfish spreads outward from the ship in concentric rings. Every few minutes the glow pulses, and in that pulse you feel something calling, not urgently, not dangerously, but inevitably. You cast your net. The fibers shiver in your hands. They sink. When you pull them back, the weight is unfamiliar, heavy, not in mass, in meaning. It takes all your strength to haul it over the side. It isn't wet. It isn't even from the sea. It's a door, wooden, old, with rusted hinges and a knotted rope for a handle. No frame, no explanation. Just a door shaped like the ones found in hillside cottages, the kind that guard secrets rather than rooms. You lay it on the deck. No one speaks, not even Torsten. The door pulses. You kneel before it, and it opens. There is no mechanism, no latch. It opens because it chooses to. Behind it, not blackness, but light. Not dazzling light, not divine light, soft light, the kind of glow that comes from within the memory of firelight or the gentle burn of morning sun on pages long forgotten. You peer through, and you see a table set for 3, a bowl of soup, a lantern, a journal, and your name written in script you haven't seen since childhood. The crew stands behind you, waiting. You step forward, through the door. The light surrounds you, not blinding but embracing. And when it fades, you are below deck, but not on the Vardeheim, on a ship like it older, quieter, made not of wood, but of things that remember wood, of coral and memory and stories. Your net is in your hands, and there is someone beside you. You, but different. The older you. The you from the reflection in the mirror. The one who had forgotten everything except how to remember. She or he smiles. You both cast your nets at once. The sea answers. Together you pull. Together you begin the final chapter. There are moments on the sea that defy the language used to describe them, not because they are particularly grand or terrifying, but because they pass through the consciousness, like mist across the face, difficult to grasp, impossible to name, yet heavy with the sense that something sacred has occurred. You are now firmly within such a moment. Days or perhaps weeks have passed since you crossed through the wooden door that arrived on the deck without explanation, that lay upon the planks as if waiting for you alone, offering no promises and requiring no assurances, only that you accept what lies on the other side, with the quiet faith of a net caster, trusting the line will hold. And so you did. Since then, the sea has quieted further, growing more intimate in its behavior, as though it has acknowledged your presence not as an intrusion, but as something native, something born of its deepest undercurrents. The waters no longer churn with mystery or dread. Instead, they swirl in slow spirals of memory and recognition, casting reflections that shift between what is above and what lies hidden below. The Vardeheim has grown stiller, yet she does not drift aimlessly. Her purpose remains, only now she seems to carry it with solemn grace, as though she has come to understand through your hands, your breath, and your silence, that she too is no longer a vessel of mere wood and pitch, but something more, a bearer of burden, a keeper of truths. The crew is fewer now, not because of loss, though you could not say with certainty that no one has vanished, but because of transformation. Some, like Halfdan, have transcended the need for form altogether, becoming part of the ship, or the water, or the very fog that cradles your path. Others have folded into themselves, their bodies shrinking, thinning, dissolving slowly into figures that blur at the edges like half-forgotten memories. They remain present, but in a manner less defined by flesh and more by impression. You do not speak to them often, but when you pass them on the deck or meet their gaze near the lantern's edge, you feel something exchanged between you. Acknowledgement, perhaps, or gratitude. You keep to your work. The net, though it has changed shape and temperament over time, remains your companion. It has become less a tool and more an extension of your will, its knots tightening and loosening of their own accord, its length adapting to the call of the sea, as if anticipating your intention. You no longer question the catches when they come. They arrive as stories. Once you pulled up a bundle of children's shoes, each one perfectly preserved, tied together with a ribbon made of spider silk. Another time, the net returned with a single book, leather-bound, titleless, its pages filled with names written in your handwriting, none of which you recognized. But today's casting is different. The sky above has taken on a hue you've never seen, a shade between bruise and pearl, like the moment before a storm on land, only stilled by the hush of the deep. The sea mirrors it exactly so perfectly that the line between sky and water vanishes entirely, leaving the Vardeheim suspended between two indistinguishable infinities. You cast the net. It falls not into water, but into silence. The moment it leaves your hand, the ship ceases its creaking. The sea stops its breathing. Even your own thoughts seem to pause as though waiting with bated breath. The net unfurls in slow motion, its trajectory graceful, sacred. It lands with no splash, no sound, vanishing beneath the surface like a memory being gently submerged, and then from the stillness resistance, you pull, not hard, not panicked. This is not a struggle. This is a communion. The net returns. It takes time. The rope draws back inch by inch, as though unwilling to leave whatever realm it has entered, as though what it carries must ascend slowly to remain intact. As the shape comes into view, your breath stills. The crew gathers behind you, not moving, not whispering. They know something has happened. It is a figure, a person, wrapped in netting, eyes closed, skin pale as ash hair drifting in the sea wind, though there is no wind at all. Their body rests with the ease of the unborn, folded gently, as if asleep in the arms of the deep. You place them on the deck with care. You do not recognize them, and yet every part of you knows them. They are you. You kneel beside your sleeping self. Not a twin, not a mirror, but a memory embodied. This version of you is younger, not by much, but different, untouched by the journey, not yet shaped by the harpoon, by the singing bones, by the spiral void. This is the version that first stepped aboard the Maritime, that still believed in tides and knots and destination. You watch them breathe, their eyes open. You do not flinch. They do not speak. Instead, they look up at you, and their expression is not of surprise, but of understanding. Their hands rise, reaching for yours. You take them, and suddenly, you are no longer aboard the Maritime. You are inside yourself, but not the self you know now. You are inside a memory you had not yet made a room of wood and salt and candlelight. Around you, shelves lined with jars of sea glass, dried herbs, maps inked with symbols that shimmer when touched. A whale's skull rests above the hearth. There is no fire, but the warmth is undeniable. You sit across from the younger you. Between you, a bowl of water, still, deep, reflective. They place a finger into the bowl. A ripple spreads. Inside the ripple, images you walking down a hallway that stretches for miles, each door carved with different versions of your name. You kneeling before a woman whose face shifts with each blink, asking her to remember you. You diving from the ship into a sea made of stars, not sinking but flying. The younger you speaks, not aloud, but in thought. You will forget this. You nod. They continue. You will remember something else. Something better. You place your finger into the water, your ripple meets theirs, and for a brief eternal moment, you see the entire journey at once, each cast of the net, each reflection in the sea, each choice, each version of yourself, folded like pages in a book being read by the tide. When you open your eyes, you are back on the deck. The figure is gone. The net lies at your side, steaming faintly in the morning light. Torsten is standing nearby, his arms folded, watching you not with worry, but with reverence. He nods once. You nod back. No words pass between you. None are needed. Later, when the fog rolls in, it does not bring confusion. It brings clarity. The crew begins to move again, each person taking up tasks they have not done in days or perhaps centuries. Someone raises a sail that has not been lowered. Someone sings a tune long forgotten. Someone ties a knot around a mast in a pattern that makes the entire ship shiver. You cast the net once more. This time it catches nothing, but that too is an answer. You coil it back slowly, lovingly, understanding that not all casts are for catching. Some are for remembering. Some are for letting go. And some, like this one, are simply part of the prayer. The fog returns slowly at first. No sudden sweep of gray, no abrupt collapse of visibility, but a creeping return, as if the veil between your world and the next had merely stepped aside for a breath, and now reverently draws itself back across the edges of the sky. But this fog is not the same as the mist that blanketed the Vardheim in the early days of your voyage. It carries no menace, no sense of warning or obscuration. Instead, it behaves more like memory rolling in, not to hide what is ahead, but to soften what is behind, to render the landscape of your passage less rigid and more dreamlike, so that you might part from it without grief. It wraps around the mast, and the sails tucks itself into the lines and the crevices of wood with the care of a lover folding a beloved's coat, and it blurs the boundaries between ship and sea, between air and breath, between past and present. You know what this means. Not because someone has told you, not because any voice or face has spoken the final chapter aloud, but because the rhythm of the ocean itself has changed. You feel it in the planks beneath your feet, where the beat of the ship's heart has slowed to a lullaby. You sense it in the air where each breath tastes of salt and finality. You even hear it in the net. Yes, the net, your lifelong companion, your confessionary, your altar. It no longer murmurs. It no longer trembles. It lies coiled now in stillness, perfectly aligned, as if it has tied its own last knot. The others are gathered near the rail. They stand in silence, not out of fear nor fatigue, nor even reverence, but something deeper, more intimate, more human. They stand as witnesses, as fellow bearers of the great quiet that comes not at the end of things, but in that sacred pause between the last cast and the next. Torsten stands closest to you, his body thinner than you remember, his cheeks hollowed into the shape of a man who has given much to the sea and asked for little in return. His eyes are half-lidded, as if watching something behind his own eyelids. You suspect he no longer sees the world as you do. You suspect he sees in layers now, layers of tide, of history, of choice. The rest of the crew, what remains of them, sway gently with the rocking of the deck. None speak. None need to. The ship slows. There is no wind, no anchor. But the Vardheim ceases to move. You walk to the bow, and as you do, you feel the warmth rising from the wood, a kind of farewell heat, like the last embers of a hearth fire as dawn approaches. You place a hand on the rail and close your eyes, and there it is, that sound, the hum beneath the surface. Not quite song, not quite vibration, but something living, a pulse, a calling, a heartbeat, not your own, but one you've grown familiar with over the course of the voyage, one that once lived only in the deep, now rising to meet you. You open your eyes. Before the ship stretches a horizon, not of water or land, but of light. A great curtain of gold and violet threaded with blue, shimmering like the back of a whale breaching the last sky. It rises gently, endlessly, like the world has curled in on itself and formed a shell, a spiral path leading inward rather than outward, and in the center of it a path, a narrow trail of light no wider than the ship itself, winding forward into the haze. It does not touch the sea. It floats. It beckons. You turn to your companions. They nod. One by one, they begin to step off the deck onto that path barefoot and solemn. Not walking like those in farewell, but like those returning to something once lost. Their silhouettes blur as they move farther along the trail, slowly dissolving into the mist like ink drawn into tide. Torsten is the last to step beside you. He places his hand on your shoulder, not firmly, but with the softness of someone touching driftwood pulled from a storm. "I will wait for you," he says, and then he is gone. You are alone. You pick up the net one last time. It is light now, not because it is empty, but because it no longer carries the burden of your uncertainty. You look to the horizon, and you cast. The arc of the net, the rhythm of your arm, the pull of the line. It all unfolds with the grace of muscle memory, of ritual, of surrender. The net sails through the air and disappears into the sea. You do not pull it back. You do not need to, because you understand. It has always returned to you. Just as you now return to it, you step down from the deck. Your bare feet touch the path. It is not solid. It is not water. It is not light. It is story, and it holds you. You walk. The air grows warmer, softer, heavier with the scent of wood smoke and salt. You hear gulls distant not above but within. You feel the pull of home, not as a place, but as a question you no longer need answered. The spiral grows narrower. The path winds inward, and at its center is a door, not the one you passed through before, a different door, made of rope and tide and breath. You raise your hand. You do not knock. You remember. And the door opens. You step through. And now, as the water smooths and the final image fades into mist, as the last knot lies undisturbed and the net rests in perfect stillness, beside your empty hands, we come to the end, not of the sea, for the sea has no end, but of the story that carried you across its hidden spine. The ship has sailed farther than any compass may follow, beyond the names of maps and the lines of sky and tide, into a place where memory breathes and forgetting is a form of grace. Perhaps you walked beside the figure in the conch shell hall. Perhaps you threw the harpoon not to wound, but to remember. Perhaps you watched the mirror unfold its arms and cradle your reflection, not to show you who you were, but to guide you into who you might still become. Or perhaps none of that matters anymore, because the sea remembers, and the sea forgets. And in the space between the two, you found something not even the ocean can carry alone. Tonight you will rest. You will let the salt settle and the waves hush. You will drift gently like a feather cast from a whale's back into dawn. And maybe, just maybe when you wake, the air will taste of sea glass and ash, and your fingers will remember how to tie the net that carries stories across the dark. Good night. Sleep well. You are home now.